Well, good morning, everyone. How are you? Awesome. I remember the last time, it was probably, 3-4 weeks ago since I had the pleasure of coming here and talking to you. You all remember what we talked about last time? Anybody remember? We talked about high blood pressure? All right. So we know, right, we all have to watch our blood pressure, which is why Tracy's here with me today. And after our little brief talk, we're set up right where we usually are, okay? And all of you are welcome to come back one at a time, and we'll do your blood pressure for free and just discuss any health issue one-on-one with you. If you have a question about what we talk about today or maybe what we talked about the last time, that's what we're here for. We're here to help. And I think today, let's go back. But the last time I was here, we talked about something that was very important to many of us, right? I remember I raised my hand. I said, I'm the first one to say I have high blood pressure. And we talked about all the reasons that high blood pressure is bad, right? We talked about how it leads to heart disease and it increases your risk for stroke and for congestive heart failure and other things. Well, today I'm going to talk to you about something that does all of that as well. And it's just as bad. And what's that?
High blood pressure can also cause a heart attack.
Absolutely, it can. But today we're going to talk about something that causes heart disease, okay, amongst other problems that many of us, myself included, I even have my little bracelet on to prove it, diabetes. Diabetes is probably the second most common chronic condition that people over the age of 50 suffer from in America today. And it doesn't know a difference between whether you're a man or a woman. It doesn't discriminate whether you're one race or another, or one religion or another, or nothing. Diabetes is uncontrolled sugar in your blood. How many people have heard of diabetes in the past? Wow, everybody knows all about diabetes, right? Well, what I'd like to do today is talk a little bit about the more common form of diabetes, the one that by and large, okay, affects most of us. And there are two types, okay? Type 1 diabetes, you generally inherit as a child. It develops while you're a child. It's often been called insulin-dependent diabetes. And this type of diabetes is genetic in nature, meaning you're born with your body unable to produce enough insulin to control the sugar in your body. And so from the time you're a child all the way through your life, you're dependent upon insulin shots to help control the sugar in your body. That's type 1. But the more common type doesn't develop until we get a little bit older. Now, we are seeing it develop earlier. We're seeing it in adolescence. But by and large, individuals over 30 who tend to be sedentary, overweight, and have a high carbohydrate or high alcohol intake seem to be predisposed to it, although those are not the only reasons someone might develop type 2 diabetes. Now, the interesting thing about type 2 diabetes is, unlike type 1, where the problem is your body just doesn't produce insulin, type 2, your body produces insulin, but the rest of your body doesn't know what to do with that insulin. So that sugar just keeps building up and building up and building up in your body. Why is that a problem? Because like high blood pressure, high blood sugar in your body can lead to kidney problems, heart problems, okay? Increased risk for stroke, increased risk for heart attack, okay? And it does that because when your body has a high amount of blood sugar in it constantly, it has to do something with it. And if it can't get it into where it needs to go, where it's meant to go, it stores it as fat. So where does that fat get stored? That fat gets stored in your liver. And then I'm sure everybody's heard at one point or another you have high cholesterol and you got to take cholesterol drugs. Well, the first hallmark of uncontrolled type 2 diabetes is you may go to your doctor for a routine visit and find that they do a blood test and they say, you have high cholesterol, so let's put you on a pill for that. which they've already put you on a pill maybe for high blood pressure. We talked about that last week. See, the cool thing about healthcare is they have no endless number of pills. They can put you on pills till the cows come home. They've got a pill for everything. However, like we discussed the last time, is that the best way to treat things?
No.
Absolutely not. Number one, pills only work sometimes for some people. And with very rare exception, once you start a medication for cholesterol or blood pressure, or what we're talking about today, diabetes, it's highly unlikely you'll ever be able to come off it, and more than likely that the dosages will have to be continually increased. And like we've talked about in the past, pills come with what? Side effects, right? So we see things when people take a lot of medications, and sometimes there's so many medications we're on, they interact with each other and sort of cancel each other out. So we go back to the doctor's office and he draws our blood again, and you've been on these wonderful pills and your blood pressure is up and your blood sugar is up, and you're left with your head spinning saying, well, I thought you said these pills will work. Well, that's because sometimes they would work by themselves, but when taken together, they interact with one another. So it's very important when you're on any kind of medication, whether it's diabetes, hypertension, cholesterol, that you talk with your doctor or your nurse or one of us while we're here about the types of medications you're on and when you should take them. Did you know, anybody have, no show of hands, but I think everybody can say at one time or another you've had heartburn, right? And what do you take? You take Maalox maybe, you take some Tums or whatever. Did you know if you take those medications with some of your diabetic medications will not be absorbed. So you're essentially missing your dose. Did you know that? Very, very important to talk to your nurse or your doctor about all the medications you're taking whenever you start a new medication. Now, there are some things that we can do when we have high blood sugar to help lower it without medication. Now, I'm not suggesting that if your doctor says to you, you need to go on this or that or the other thing, that you shouldn't do it. But everything works better when you treat it holistically. Exercise. Exercise and weight loss are the two biggest activities that you can do that improve your overall health. Why? Because it lowers your blood pressure, it lowers your cholesterol, and it significantly reduces your blood sugar levels. And if you combine that with your medications, very often you can live a symptom-free life with diabetes. Now, having said that, what are some of the symptoms of diabetes? Well, I will tell you, the first one that I hear a lot is, I have been so thirsty lately. I just am so thirsty, I cannot get enough water. Increased thirst and increased hunger. Why? Because your blood is predominantly water. And when you have too much salt in or sugar in your blood, it becomes thicker. And a signal in your brain says, my blood is not flowing the way it should. And it triggers that thirst response. And so you guys are drinking tremendous amounts of fluid and you're running to the bathroom. And for those who are on water pills for high blood pressure, that can be an all-day experience. No sooner do you get out, you're back in there, right? So that's the first sign. Often, though, we find people come to us and say, I'm extremely hungry and I just ate and I'm still hungry. Why is that? Because no matter what you eat, when you digest it, ultimately, the body turns it into that blood sugar. That's what fuels your body. If that sugar is staying stuck in your blood and not getting into the body parts that it's supposed to, okay, your brain says, I don't have any blood sugar, even though it's very high. And it triggers in your brain your hunger response. So you feel hungry, even though your belly's full of food. So if you're eating a tremendous amount of food and you're still hungry, the first thing we want to do is check some urine and some blood to see whether or not you have a high amount of blood sugar in it. Also, because your sugar is staying in the blood instead of going to where it needs to go, you tend to lose weight. And we see people who have a very pot-belly appearance, but very spindly legs and spindly arms. That's because your body's literally digesting itself, trying to get alternative nutrition, okay? When we get you on the proper medication to bring your blood sugar down, your hunger will go down, but your weight will start to stabilize and you'll start to fill back out the way you should, okay? And so those are some of the reasons you saw, or maybe when you were first diagnosed, you experienced some of those. These are very serious problems because when you start to digest your muscles, because your brain thinks you don't have any sugar, although you do, it changes the chemistry in your body in ways that damage your liver, particularly your kidneys, which is why diabetes, actually, it's not the high sugar that damages your kidneys, it's your body breaking down muscle to help compensate, okay? And that can lead to kidney failure. If you have high blood pressure to go along with that, you're at twice as likely a chance of experiencing what we call kidney failure, okay? If you have high cholesterol and hypertension that goes along with it, you're almost 10-fold likelier to have coronary artery disease that can lead to angina and in some cases even heart attack and stroke. It's really super important if you're not diabetic, but you begin to experience unusual thirst, unusual hunger, frequent urination. These are signs, these are significant signs to pay attention because with proper treatment, the damage can be kept at a very minimum, okay? So how do we tell if somebody has diabetes? We talked about the blood test. There's two different ways we test it, so don't be surprised if you go to your doctor with these symptoms and they say to you, okay, we're going to have you drink something sickly sweet. It's called an oral glucose tolerance test. And I see heads shaking, and it's really kind of gross, isn't it? Right? You drink it, and it's almost like drinking a bottle of syrup. And what they're looking to do is see whether or not your body is able to take care of all that sugar that they're giving to you in a load. There are certain levels of change that your physician and nurse know that can help diagnose it, but that will be the first one. Then let's say you do have diabetes. There's two very important things you need to do with your doctor. One is you need to go at least twice a year to have your A1C. Has anyone ever heard of that? Your A1C level? Because what that does is that tells us how good you've been managing your diabetes over the last 90 days, 90-ish days, okay? We start out 4 times a year, then twice a year, and we kind of measure how you're managing your diabetes. Then the most important thing you need to do, if they tell you you're diabetic, is get yourself a glucometer, and you need to check your blood glucose before every meal, when you get up in the morning, and when you go to bed at night. This is particularly true if your doctor decides you actually need insulin, then you're going to check it before and shortly thereafter. Failure to do that is the #1 cause for people who are taking diabetic medications, maybe even insulin, to not get the results they want or to be hospitalized because their blood sugar goes too high or too low. And by the way, if your blood sugar goes too high or too low, you know what happens? You pass out, right? And they can both be life-threatening. So it's not a joke. If you've determined to have diabetes, okay, you need to check it. Lastly, let's say living with diabetes, we know we have to exercise. We know we have to change our diet, okay? If we can't exercise, diet is probably going to be the biggest impact that you can make on it. To have a good, healthy diet, whether it's a heart-healthy diet or a healthy diabetic diet, is to reduce the most amount of carbohydrates in your diet as possible. Does everybody know what carbohydrates are? Can you give me an example of carbohydrates? Potatoes, yams, pasta, rice, bread. All the things that make life worth living, right? They're the things we need to reduce. And you know what? It starts with a commitment to not trying to do something that's not practical. Sometimes we can't just quit cold turkey, right? And that doesn't make a lot of sense. Plus there's sugar and everything. But what you can do is just like the salt, you can cut unnecessary things out. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're eating healthy and you're going to have a salad. And you have the option to put croutons on your salad. Well, that's bread. See, you need to stop that. Let's say it's Thanksgiving and you've got yams and mashed potatoes in front of you, right? And maybe we need to pick one or the other. Or maybe we need to go for a second helping of one of the vegetables or the turkey. Because protein in vegetables in diabetes is the best way to get an immediate control over the blood sugar in your body. It is a choice, and it is a hard one. It's as hard as quitting smoking, or it's as hard as not using salt, but it is what will keep you healthy the longest with it. Okay? Now, up in the front of the room, I've left a couple of handouts like I did the last time. These are all specific to helping you understand diabetes, and if you have it, how to better manage it. Okay? One of the things that's up there I think is kind of interesting. If you don't have diabetes, but your physician said, we're going to watch you because we think you're pre-diabetic. That means that your blood sugar is not so high as to call you diabetic, but it looks like you're heading in that direction. Many times, even type 2 diabetes is inherited from the family. So if you want a fun activity because you're bored, I put out a family tree and everybody can take one. And you can fill in your parents, your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles, and mark off whether or not they had diabetes. Now, interestingly, you can actually bring this to your doctor and they can tell you your risk for developing diabetes based on your family history. So it's a fun activity if you so desire, and it gives you an idea of what risks you may be facing. Now, the other thing up there for you that I left is it's called a medication chart. From talking with many of you in the past, I know most of us aren't on just one medication. We're on a lot of them. And I'll bet if I went to your house and you said, this is where I keep my meds, my guess is there's going to be a whole bunch of pill bottles or a bag of them or whatever. Okay? It's important that you list your medications out so that if anything happens, people who are helping you understand what you're on and when you may have taken it. So there's a sheet up there. If you're interested, feel free to take one or take a couple for your friends. It'll just be something that's a good idea to keep with your medications or take with you to the doctor who can see maybe you're going to an endocrinologist. What's that? That is a doctor who specializes in treating diabetes. Sometimes our doctors, our regular doctors, send us to a specialist, but they don't kind of send over what meds they have you on. And so those doctors are left scratching their head going, well, I know I need to put her on this, but I'm not sure. She might already be on it. So having a med list in your personal possession is something you can do to help facilitate your health care when you're meeting with doctors and nurses and things of that nature. Yes, ma'am. That's ideal. And that is what we would like to see everybody do. And so if you have a list, you just go on keeping that list. And if you don't have a list, there's an example list over there. And I would recommend you do as she does. Keep it on you at all times. Okay? What other questions about diabetes does anybody have? Yes, ma'am.
We used to refrigerate the insulin.
Yes.
But now it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, so I will tell you that if you are using insulin where the bottle of the regular insulin, the one with the R on it, if you're using that and you're using a bottle or more a month, it is safe to keep at room temperature. However, I take 2 different types of insulin, and I keep all my insulin refrigerated because that's just the best thing to do with it. And I would recommend everybody keep your insulin refrigerated. It keeps it from breaking down. And the other thing too I want to mention is for those of you who might be taking insulin, I've seen a lot of times, you know how they tell you got to mix the bottle up before you draw it up? Don't shake your bottle. Because if you shake the bottle to mix it up, it breaks up the drug and makes it less or ineffective. When you do insulin, what you want to do is you want to put the bottle in your hand and roll it gently like you're rolling dough. That'll mix it up appropriately without breaking up the little molecules that make up the drug, because it does no good to take something that's no longer effective. Yes? No, because your blood pressure can't tell whether or not you're diabetic. Now, your blood pressure is going to tell you whether you have hypertension or not. But that's very important because if you're checking your blood pressure, and you should, if you have high blood pressure, you should check it the same time every day, in the same spot every day, because even if your machine is not accurate, it will give an idea of how much you're varying. And if consistently you are coming up with a high number, you need to talk to a doctor or a nurse about something. It's either diet related or it's medication related or both, and they need to be addressed. So I would recommend a couple of things. One is a comprehensive review of your diet to see if there's some things you could do with your diet to help bring it down. I'd also, it sounds like you're not taking any blood pressure medications currently. I would also look at what kind of exercise and what kind of weight loss might be appropriate and review it in 3 months, 6 months. And if you make some significant changes, you probably will get it back below into the normal range. But if you don't, and your doctor says to you, I'm still not ready for you to go on medications, I would urge you to get a second opinion, because the American Heart Association says anything over 130 is cause for concern now. So for both diabetes and for heart-healthy diet, no added salt ever. Exchange things like canned vegetables for frozen vegetables. Canned vegetables are canned using salt. Frozen are not. Okay? No added salt. Eliminate things like cheese, high in salt. Yep, I know. I like Parmesan cheese on everything, right? But Parmesan cheese is about 50% salt. So you might as well just use the salt shaker, okay? And then from the dietary side, with diabetes, simple sugars and simple carbohydrates. And the best way to think about that is candy, and if it's white. White potatoes, white bread, okay, white rice. Those type of things are your first steps towards making a healthier diet that will help from a diet level and a weight loss to start bringing your blood sugar down. Now, if you're significantly diabetic, you're going to have to do that, and then there's going to be medications and everything else to go along with it. But I would recommend that for everybody, because all the recent medical research suggests that white carbohydrates are one of the worst things we can really consume. And it really, as unbelievable as it sounds, should be lumped in the junk food.
Wow.
Okay?
Well, I can do a lot of the white carbohydrates, but I'm a cheese lover and I love cheddar.
So cheddar's middle of the road, but you need to stay away from smoked cheeses, and better choices that are lower are goat's cheese, provolone, things that have lower fat and lower salt content in their making. And we actually have a dietary exchange, I think we gave it the last time, and if not, I'll bring it the next time I come, that can give just that substitution even in cheese. Things like Velveeta, okay? American cheese, it's not even cheese, right? It's oil and salt and food color. Swiss is okay, and there is low sodium Swiss, so that is a great option for you cheese lovers out there. The harder the cheese, generally the higher the salt content. okay? Blue cheeses that crumble, right? Asiago, all of those yummy ones, really high in salt.